What's up, guys? Today we're going over a really cool tier list. I know you guys love tier lists. It's something that I have gotten very positive reviews on. For some reason, my terrible, terrible, terrible Pokemon opinions seem to appease you guys in a way that I can't understand. But today we're going to do a little bit more of a less fun, more meta-centric, like this weekend is this regionals. What do I think the decks are going to pan out and how I think things are going to end up kind of thing, rather than like a beginning of format or end of format metagame. We're in the middle of a format, smack dab. We have our Lost Origin regionals with Salt Lake City coming up in 2 days. 2 days time now? Three days time? When this happens? I don't know. 2 or 3 days. I don't really know. Time is kind of a blur. But we'll be playing in this format. So I kind of picked out some of the decks that I would, expect to see. Like these are the decks that I personally think would be like a name. Like this is something that I would personally say like, okay, this is something that, do I have a game plan into this? Okay, go next kind of thing. And so I am going to go ahead and put them into this tier list that the lovely Trainer Hill website, which has a lot of analysis and metadata. If you guys have not checked out this website, you can do breakdowns, matchups, all this cool stuff to see raw data, quantitative data on where things are laying out, how things are going from play.limitless. This will condense a lot of tournaments into one for you. If you're just trying to look at maybe what happened this last week, like if you're going to Lille next week, maybe you're trying to look at this weekend's regionals, as well as what happens in between now and then for online results. So cool, really cool tool. You can kind of set any of the decks you want. I've picked the decks that I think are reasonable. There's 6 pages of decks. I feel like once you pass kind of these first couple decks, it's not really worth. I guess we can put the Alga on here. I guess we can put the Alga on here. Let's put the Alga on here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a tier list for you guys of where I think decks are. And when I say S tier, I expect this deck to potentially win the tournament. Is my opinion. I think A tier is a deck that is safe enough for you to make day 2, potentially top 8. I think B tier is like, I expect a couple to make day 2, not too many, and I think I'd be very shocked if they made top 8. I think C tier is like one of the decks like maybe makes it to day 2, and then D tier is like, this deck is probably not making D2. You're probably not going very deep with this deck in general in the tournament. But yeah, generally S is like, this deck is going to top 8. This deck is going to win the tournament. A is safe day 2. B is like a risky day 2. And then C is like, yeah, that's kind of how I think I'm going to use these for our tournament-centric breakdowns, because I think getting us prepared for regionals is also one thing I really want to do. And that all being said, let's jump right into it. Sorry, I know I droned on for a little bit long. I think Mew Genesect 1,000, 2,000, 4,000% goes into S tier. I think Mew Genesect is one of the top 3 decks, in my opinion, right now in the format. I think Mew Genesect is poised to take down the tournament. Even with all the Drapion hate, even with all these other cards, we saw Mew still rising to the top in terms of how it performed, what it was able to do in the current metagame. And I think that trend will continue with Mew being as powerful as it is. This new DTE build of Mew has been very flexible because you have so many more card slots to work with. You can play healing cards if you need to deal with Lost Box. You can play your own Path to the Peak Roxanne combo. You can play cards like Lost City to deal with Regigigas, which is making that matchup a little bit better even. So it's kind of crazy to think about this Mew Genesect deck that's been around since Fusion Strike came out, almost a year now, and it is still performing just as well as the day it came out, and I think it will until it rotates out of the format. Giratina is another 1,000% into the S tier in terms of what I think its like tournament capabilities are, like winning the tournament, all that kind of jazz. Like I think Giratina is probably the best deck in the format right now in terms of just not having any negative matchups, how powerful it can be, doing that 280 damage, being able to use cards like Lost Vacuum, your own copies of all these Lost Zone cards to simply just ramp up and use the various attackers like Cramorant in the early game, move into the Giratina to start doing 280. One Giratina V-Star can take 4 prizes pretty easily with a Star Requiem. And then you can just kind of close out the game with another Giratina. Mirage Gate is absolutely fantastic. And then you can close the game with things like Sableye, take a few prizes here or there on Comfees. Very, very cool card. I think I really like the Giratina deck. Kyurem Palkia comes in at A tier for me, because while Kyurem Palkia is very, very strong, and we saw 2 make top 4 over in Peoria, I'm not fully sold on it myself. I think Kyurem Palkia is a very one-dimensional, very aggressive, straightforward deck. I think there was just a lot of sheer numbers of people who opted to play it at the last regionals, and so I think that kind of resulted in its success. But I think as people are fleshing out Giratina lists, as people are figuring out what they want to put in their Mew lists, and with decks like Lost Box kind of petering off to the side, I think we will see a significant rise in these the Giratina and Mew decks understand how to handle the Chiron Palkia matchup, and I think that the matchup is slightly favored for both of our S tier decks. Palkia Inteleon is the third deck and probably final deck that I'll be putting in S tier. I think Palkia Inteleon is a deck that has been good since its release. We saw a very optimized list from Isaiah Bradner and company, which is, my group, not to brag, over at NAIC. We saw a very, very optimized list from that group, playing the 4 Irida, 4 Battle VIP Pass. And since then, the iterations of the list have been 1 or 2 cards different, with the 58 to 57 to 60 card core complete. Even James Cox and Kaiwan Kababe playing something very, very similar at the World Championships. And that iteration of a list has been continuing since then, playing heavy VIP, heavy Irida, getting set up, getting your ball rolling, having a couple of tech cards here and there, like cards like Big Charm might make their way into the deck, cards like Quick Shooting might make its way into the deck, Crabominable, whatever, maybe a Drapion of your own, who knows, but Palkia Inteleon is one of the best decks in the format because it is so good at setting up and doing a lot of damage and being very efficient with taking those 6 prizes, and that will continue to happen. I think this version of Lost Zone box is a Charizard box. I'm going to go ahead and put that into A tier because Tord just came off the back of a win with it. We saw how powerful it was, and it is a very, staple of the format. Lost Zone boxes got all the stuff in it. It's got the Sableye, it's got the path to the peaks to put the other decks in a stalemate position. You got your Zard, all that good stuff. And then this version of Lost Box, I think, with less Zard, more like Snorlax, and I don't know, like a Mirage Gate style deck. I think that goes into tier B because while the deck has a lot of potential with your Mirage Gate, like Amazing Rare Reshiram, maybe like Amazing Rare Yveltal, maybe you're playing like a Thornton combo, have your Snorlaxes, whatever. You have so much room to do whatever you want. The problem is those versions don't have a concrete end game win condition a lot of the time, and so they have so much going on in the list that you're kind of a mercy to what you're drawing into what order. Whereas the Lost Zone box that Tord has with the Sableye version, you just expedite your process to the Sableye, or Giratina, you expedite the process to the Giratina, and you have a clear-cut condition there, especially with the Zard or the Tina. But this Lost Zone box, you don't have a clear condition in my mind. I think Hisuian Zoroark is C tier. I think while I think the deck had 2 really good finishes in Peoria, I think the deck itself is not actually very strong. And it has a pretty bad matchup into all of the top 3, as well as maybe 4 and 5 in our A tier right now. I think this deck does not really have that many good matchups. It simply can high roll its way through the tournament. So yeah, that's my verdict on that. I don't know what other is, so I'm just gonna kind of leave it. I'm just not gonna touch other. I feel like that's just an amalgamation of decks that we can't really name, which is unfair to put on a tier list. So Reggie's, I'm gonna go ahead and put in a tier A as well. I think Reggie's is pretty absurdly strong actually for the metagame. I think it was a really good metagame called Peoria. And I think it's one of those where, if you can sequence things correctly, this is actually an insane deck. All you have to do is sequence things correctly and you'll be in a good spot. I'm going to put Arc Flying Peak in C tier because I think while Arc Flying Peak as a whole can be very strong, I think that it has lost a lot of momentum in what it wants to do. And I think with these new decks like Mew and, not new, but Giratina and Lost Box and these stuff, the matchups get harder, even though it's in a weird way, it shouldn't be as hard, but it becomes harder. I can't really explain it, but Arc Flying Pika just has lost a lot of the favor that it's supposed to have in the format. Arc Intel I also go ahead and put into C tier because I think while Arc Intel is super strong, and it does one thing very linearly and very well, I personally don't believe in the power of Arc Intel because you're just healing at a certain point and your damage always gets eclipsed by these bigger, beefier decks that can just play path or just one shot you. Giratina does a real number on you. It's crazy. So that's just where my thought process is. Arc Guja is going to go into B for me because I think Arc Guja has the potential to make day 2, has the potential to do very, very well in the tournament, but I don't think I would expect to see it in top 8. I think Arc Guja is one of those decks where it falls just a little bit short because I think even though you're a tank deck, you are just a mid-tier tank deck that uses Hyper Potions to kind of gain favor and advantage, but at the end of the day, you're not really getting too much. I think Arc Tina goes into A tier because Arc Tina is a similar concept to obviously Arc Guja or Arc Pika, but you have the firepower of one-shots with the Tina, which is very, very reliable actually, and you can play other Psychic attackers or a Grass attacker like a Leafeon or something in there to kind of just ramp up your board. I don't know. So you have more flexibility as well with these 3 variants, space, whatever. Blissey goes into D. I think Blissey's a trap. I think Blissey has been performing very well in online events recently. I talked about it in Luke Morse's Celio's Networks meta discussion, and I think Blissey is probably one of the biggest traps right now in the format, and I'm gonna abide by that. I think while it's very, very strong, I think that it is a BO1 deck where you're not ever gonna really finish a good BO3, and I think there's too many things at the top of the table that give it a problem. Shadow Rider Calyrex, I'm gonna put in a C tier. just because I think I was pretty high on Shadow Rider as soon as the format started, and I thought the deck could be really, really good. But I don't think you have a great Mew matchup. I think your Palkia matchup's really iffy, and I think Giratina is not clean either. But I think Lost Box, Reggie's, like some of these like niche decks you can beat if you get set up, and also it depends on what you're pairing with the Shadow Rider. Like I know last format or like a few formats ago, players were pairing it with Whimsicott to try to do something there. I do think at the end of the day, Shadow Rider Calyrex is not like the worst play. I just think it's not going to have a good representation. I'm going to go ahead and put Arc Dura and Dialga both in D tier because I think Arc Dura is just a worse Arc Gudra for wall purposes here. Yes, you can muster out the Duraludon, but I think that it is one of those decks that I would not personally play myself. And then Dialga, I think, has been proven time and time again. It cannot use the Lost Engine properly because you need to get the energies in the discard. You cannot get rid of some of these one-off cards, like getting rid of a Saucer at an unfortunate time with Chorus. That sucks. You've lost the game. Like, it is such a finite, razor-thin deck, and now Giratina also gives you a massive problem to deal with. So, I don't know. I think Dialga is just, like, in a really bad spot. You have, like, one good matchup you gained out of Kyurem, but everything else becomes a worse matchup, I think, for you. So, that is my format tier list heading into Salt Lake City. Yeah, I mean, good luck, guys, if you're going. I'll be there as well. And then after this weekend, we can jump into Silver Tempest stuff. Obviously, I'll cover both the European regionals as well for my European viewers. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you like and subscribe to this video. Peace out.